Rishi Sunak's hopes of a Tory revival fuelled by tax cuts is floundering as a new poll shows Labour has extended its lead over the Conservatives.
Well, seemingly undeterred by Sir Keir Starmer's 20-point lead, the Prime Minister has spent the day, starting diplomatic fights with the Greeks and hailing a new eco-flight over the Atlantic.
Right now, something very exciting is happening in the sky above us. It all started with a government competition to support the industry to achieve the first net-zero transatlantic flight on an aircraft using 100% sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. Our government made up to £1 million of funding available to support the project, and right now it's taking off. Today's Virgin Atlantic flight to New York will be entirely fueled by SAF, made primarily from waste oils and fats. Not only will SAF be key in decarbonising aviation, but it could create a UK industry with an annual turnover of almost £2.5 billion, which could support over 5,000 UK jobs. It's great that British businesses and institutions like Virgin Atlantic, Rolls-Royce, Boeing and Sheffield University continue to raise the bar in aviation. Now that is blue sky thinking.
Oh my God, make it stop. Rishi, no one cares about that plane unless there are migrants on it going to Rwanda. What are you doing, son?
Indeed. SAF, eh? What planet is that guy on? I mean, it's all right, OK, it's a nice aeroplane, but does he think people are going to go, oh, I've just seen that SAF aeroplane, I'll vote Rishi now.
That's it, yeah.
Anyway, joining us now in the studio is Charlie Rowley, former Tory advisor, who's no doubt scratching his head and wondering what he would advise the Prime Minister to do right now. I bet you wouldn't be saying make a video about aeroplanes that run on old vegetable oil, would you?
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing at all, actually. I have to say, I think, the idea
Oh, my gosh, come on, Charlie, now.
Well, £2 billion worth of investment, 5,000 jobs, that's no bad thing for the UK.
That.
And,
But his presentation, he should be... Give him a job on QVC or something. I mean,
but he is all over the place, isn't he? I mean, he's had so many resets in the last month, we've lost count. He set the party on a course of we're the party of change. Well, I think that's a fundamental mistake. Nobody is actually going to believe that a party that's been in power for 13 years is the party of change. That's not to say they don't have their merits, but I think this was a wrong course of action to say we are the party of change. They can't be.
I think that's a fair point, because I think, that was the central theme of the conference speech that took place in October. We haven't had too much of it since, so I think that might have been quietly parked, and it's now getting back to the long-term decisions that the government need to take in order to get the country back up and running post-COVID. And so I think, and getting back to tax cuts that you talked about, dealing with the migration crisis, dealing with the backlog in the NHS, dealing with things that really matter to people right across the country.
Everyone knows who's worked in politics, all politicians, and especially the Prime Minister, has the grid. And this is basically the media planning diary, a month to a view at the very least, where you sort of figure out strategically what you're going to talk about and where you're going to go and who you're going to give interviews and so on and so forth. Did you think that anywhere on anybody's grid was the idea of picking a fight with Greece?
No, I don't think. I mean, I think it would have been on the grid to have the meeting. Obviously, it would have been to have a meeting and have a...
kicked it straight off the grid, if you want my advice.
But I think, look, this story is remarkable. I mean, this will be tomorrow's, kebab paper, I think, as opposed to chip paper, because it is so bizarre. I don't know why it's taking up so much airtime. There was clearly a meeting that was due to take place between the Greek Prime Minister and the UK Prime Minister to talk about lots of things, the economy, migration, and maybe talk about these marbles in the margins, but there was an agreement, I understand, that there was not going to be a public row over this. And then, of course, on Sunday afternoon, the Greek Prime Minister went on British national television to describe the situation as tearing up, something equivalent of tearing up the Mona Lisa, which I think was quite sort of, overly dramatic, if I can say. And so, of course, that's irritated Number 10. And, the Prime Minister's got a huge in tray. He's got too many other things to be dealing with than some Greek Prime Minister that's banging on about marbles.
But he's turned it, Charlie, into an issue by cancelling the meeting.
Right.
I would have suggested that a better course of action would have been to receive the Greek Prime Minister and tell him, well, you're not getting the marbles back in private in number 10 Downing Street. Rishi has turned this into a hill to die on, and what a strange hill that is to die on. I mean, we're always looking, I think he senses, this would be my theory, that he senses that we want this guy to show a bit of toughness, a bit of resolve. So he's looking for an issue, and he's chosen the Elgin marbles. And as I keep saying, no disrespect to most of Brits, but a lot of people don't even know what the Elgin marbles are. Still less do they care. So what a strange issue for Rishi to pick to prove what a strong character he is. It's the wrong issue, isn't it?
Well, I think it's probably why he's cancelled the meeting. And, the Greek Prime... I mean, look, we've got lots of great ties with Greece and the Greek people, and huge ties, great contributions that they make, and it's all wonderful. But, the in tray that the Prime Minister has is so vast. If you're going to waste time listening to somebody bang on about the marbles when we could be talking about immigration, when you could be talking about the economy, when you could be talking about growing both countries and working closer together, if that's what they both want to do, which I think it is, then of course it's a complete waste of time of the UK Prime Minister.
Well, I take your point there, Charlie.
And he's done the right thing to send him back.
The head of state should have turned up to the meeting, right? And then I can't imagine the Greek Prime Minister wanted to only talk about the marbles. I'm pretty sure if he's flown all the way over here for a sort of state visit or whatever it is, not a proper state visit, but I don't know, glad hand with the Tory party, that he probably wanted to talk about a number of things, like the migrant crisis as well. And Sunak's just gone, you don't want to show me respect.
But, what is that? Is that your Rishi Sunak accent?
It was like,
oh, I see, that was the Greek Prime Minister. Sorry.
No, that was Rishi trying to be like a gangster.
And how does he go again?
I'm not doing it again. It was rubbish. I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing it again.
Of course, he was offered a meeting.
Just ignore the Rishi Sunak impression and do continue.
Well, he was offered a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, which I know might be seen. Obviously, you want Prime Minister to meet Prime Minister, but Oliver Dowden, you must remember, was the former Culture Secretary, who will know a lot more about the British Museum than probably than what Rishi Sunak does, I would argue. And that's not a slight on the Prime Minister, because he's got 101 other things to be on top of. So the idea that that whole meeting was rejected, I just think is it's a PR. Something that's gone wrong. I'm sure they'll make it up over the phone, and they'll be meeting again very soon.
As I was saying to you earlier, Charlie, if you were still in power, as it were, advising these politicians, anything that involves the word marbles, be very, very careful, because the headlines the following day will be to do with you losing them. Yes. It's pretty obvious.
And something they often lose their marbles over is the ECHR. How many times do we hear this? Going back about 20 years now. We're going to leave it. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Turns out that 40 Tory MPs may rebel by backing an amendment to override the ECHR. But it turns out, however, that James Cleverly likes it, David Cameron. I mean, what is going on here? Can't they just decide?
So I think there's so much within that, because it's about the... it goes back to 2016. The whole point of Brexit was to take back control of the UK's borders, our money and our laws. And it seems to me that the UK government has passed a number of laws now. It has set up the Rwanda scheme. That is UK sovereign law that is being blocked by an international convention. Now, how you deal with that, I think, is twofold. You can either go down the path that, as you were saying, Alex, that a number of Tory MPs just want us to pull out of the EHCR, or you can actually work, I think, which might be more productive, which I think is where James Cleverly and certainly David Cameron, the new Foreign Secretary, wants to be in this place, is to work with the international community to change the EHCR.
Because we heard this about we should stay inside the EU to reform it, and yet previous Home Secretaries, Theresa May said she'd leave the ECHR and set up a British Bill of Rights. That was in the Cameron government. He now seems to like the ECHR. I mean, just do something about it already. It's not a talking shop. It's actual law in this country.
And I think that's absolutely right. That's a sentiment that lots of people hold. But I think when you're hearing even Germany are considering sort of a Rwanda-style policy, when there are other European countries that are looking to the UK to say, OK, if they're trying it, maybe we can do it, because the migration crisis is not solely a UK problem. It's happening right across mainland Europe. So I think there are other leaders in the same place as we are.
Maybe the Greek Prime Minister.
Perhaps we might have just...
We'll never know.
We've just lost him. Maybe he's on that
the biofuel flight back to Athens with no marbles.
Yeah, he's on his Matsola fueled plane on his way back to to Athens as we speak.
Olive oil,
fuming about the Elgin marbles. Aren't we all? We're furious.
Oh, honestly, it's Charlie, thank you ever so much. I mean, you tolerate us, I don't know how. We've definitely lost our marbles.
Well, you're well out of
that's for sure.
Westminster anyway.
Something in our coffee, yes.
Thanks so much.
We have more of your texts and tweets coming in this lunchtime, all about the future of the Tories. Martin says the Conservatives could still win the next election. Really? If they scrapped the net zero environmental rubbish and committed to net zero immigration. But Amanda thinks there's nothing Sunak can do to win the next election, as no one believes a word he says. It is the end of the Tory party until a leader with backbone can be found.
Backbone, didn't you see him with the Elgin marbles? He was absolutely...
Tough talking.
Iron resolve. And Howard says, as a long-time Tory voter and party member, there is no way I can vote Tory at the next election. Throwing away an 80-plus majority due to internal infighting is scandalous. Throwing tax gimmicks at us now is too little too late. Labour will win the next general election, and so I am looking at the one after. My message to Rishi is that you cannot be trusted, so just go and go now. And we also have a caller on the line, and that is Chris in Hereford. Thanks for joining us, Chris. What would you like to say?
Well, this is about Rishi Sunak winning the next general election.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, he hasn't got a hope in hell's chance of winning the next general election. Because I think they should go back to the conservatism they should earlier. They've lost all their, it's not the Conservative Party anymore. Really.
Do you know, I want to throw this back to Charlie, because what is the Conservative Party? They don't seem to know themselves. You've got the New Conservatives, you've got the ERG, you've got the One Nation Tories. And I went to Conservative conference, to one sort of gala dinner, where they said, we're the heart of the Conservative Party, we're going to take back control of the Conservative Party. Simultaneously, another big dinner happening in another part of Manchester, where they're saying exactly the opposite. We've got to get rid of these weird sort of backbench right-wing types. So he has a point, doesn't he? It's got to go back to something, at least small c conservatism.
Well, you listed a number of groups there and factions within the Conservative Party, which demonstrates that it's a broad church and a party for everybody. You know, there is something for everybody within the Conservative Party. And I think, look, you know, doing the things that your caller was just talking about, cutting taxes, getting on top of the immigration crisis that we have in this country, growing the economy, and making sure that the NHS is fit for purpose, making sure that actually people feel the pound in their pocket again, that the country is levelled up, that it's benefited in areas where it didn't benefit under Labour. And I know that people will want to just look at the 20-point lead that Labour have, but I would ask people just to look at the other polls that take place that show that the vast majority of people are still undecided because of the lack of policy that is coming forward from the Labour Party. And I think when it comes to an election which focuses people's minds, there will be a real choice to either, yes, carry on with Rishi Sunak, who is cutting tax and doing all the Conservative things that people want.
You're not working for them anymore.
Putting that at risk.
Charlie, I know you were up early
nice
to do the
try,
breakfast show,
but
I
no
think,
cigar.
Yeah, the delirium is beginning to set in.
I've been up for a few hours now, so we've all lost our marbles.
I wonder if